San Francisco 49ers adding more coaches to the mix, stealing from the Seattle Seahawks. KJ Wright, linebackers coach, assistant linebackers coach. Speaking of the Seahawks, they're cutting guys. Lots of action in the offseason, combine rumors, all that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always. A very special guest joining us on this Wednesday episode as well. We'll bring him in momentarily. Appreciate everybody out there making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love all the everydayers and love it when you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And now let's bring on today's guest.
Nicholas Winkler, come on down.
Can't believe it.
Action News 8 Sports with Nick Winkler.
Wink, what's happening, my man? Were you glued to the television watching the NFL scouting combine, watching all the big men and little men running around in tight shorts? It's fun, gets you amped for the offseason. We've got guys getting the franchise tag. We've got legal tampering periods happening within the next week or so. Pumped for the offseason. What are you most pumped for right now, Wink, as it pertains to the NFL calendar?
I mean, as a 49er fan, how good does it feel to see Russell Wilson get cut? Like, it just feels good. It feels nice. Like, yeah, he beat us a lot of times over the years. Like, that's fun to see. And you know, and who cares about Denver too and the big hit they're taking? Like, it's kind of a sit back and kind of laugh moment, right? Because the 49ers, you know, a lot of people the last few years have been saying, oh, that Trey Lance trade, that was like the worst trade ever. Well, now that's been topped, right, by the Russell Wilson trade. That's clearly the worst trade ever.
How about the trade for Jamal Adams? 2 first-round picks.
Horrible.
Jamal Adams cut, the Seahawks cutting both their starting safeties, Quandre Diggs as well, both getting the axe for the Seattle Seahawks. I would put, look, the 49ers Trey Lance move was bad. They lit 3 first-round picks on fire. Got nothing for it, right? But they found a quarterback. It hurts to not have those potential. We're in an offseason where we're looking for defensive ends and pass rushers. We're looking for offensive tackles. We're looking for cornerbacks. You can get all 3 of those things with some first-round picks, right? Cost-controlled, young, starting talent. So it's not nothing, but it didn't set the 49ers back because they ended up finding a quarterback. And they had a really good team, and it didn't hurt them cap-wise. You look at what the Denver Broncos did, $85 million in dead money. It's bigger than the next 2 NFL history dead cap money hits combined. Like, it's wild. And then what the Seahawks did with the whole Jamal, and I love Jamal Adams as a player. Loved him coming out of LSU. I thought the Niners should have drafted him in 2017 over who did they even take in 2017? I can't remember now. They took they had 2 they traded down, and they took Solomon Thomas. Yeah, Solomon Thomas. That was my shot at 49ers pick. I loved him. Thought he was a leader, an awesome player. Obviously he's a safety, so the positional value is not there, and he was awesome with the Jets. And then he didn't do anything for the Seahawks. There was injuries, and now he's a liability in coverage. He's probably got to go play linebacker for someone. Heck, maybe Niners bring him in on the cheap to play linebacker and make sure they've got some coverage for Dre Greenlaw potentially. But those 2 trades were way worse for those franchises than the Trey Lance move was bad for the 49ers.
And it's funny because I say I'm so happy to see Russell Wilson get cut, right? But at the same time, if the 49ers were going to go sign him for the league minimum and bring him in as the backup quarterback for the 49ers, I would applaud it. I would cheer it on.
Russell Wilson and Jamal Adams for the league minimum. Bring him in. Go. Legal tampering period. Let's go. To be honest with you, Russell Wilson and the Raiders, I think, is perfect because they're the division rival. Could really stick it to the Denver Broncos. Hey, thanks for paying our stopgap starting quarterback as the Raiders try to figure out what the heck they're doing with the quarterback position. I kind of like that fit.
You mentioned another Seahawk that was cut. You talked about Diggs.
He's actually playing well for the Seahawks. Yeah, he's good.
You know, made plays. I mean, how many times did he pick off the 49ers or be in position, right? And obviously one guy can't stop an entire juggernaut of an offense with the 49ers, but I feel like there's some value there. And the 49ers have had veterans, guys like Tayshaun Gibson, right? Like, is Gibson done? Is he hanging it up? It's going to retire. You know, if so, if you're looking for kind of a veteran presence on the back end, Diggs might be a guy that you look into.
Wink.
Like that.
So KJ Wright comes in. He is the and apparently he interviewed for a job with the new staff, Mike McDonald's staff with the Seattle Seahawks. They didn't want to bring in KJ Wright, so Niners bring him in. He's assistant linebackers coach, quality control coach on defense as well. How do you rate what the 49ers have done with their coaching staff this offseason, Wink? Because they've officially hired a defensive coordinator and brought in Brandon Staley as well. And apologies if I keep calling him Joe Staley. I'm going to try really hard to call him Brandon Staley, not Joe Staley. But Brandon Staley's going to come in some kind of role. It looked like maybe linebackers, but Niners are full of linebacker coaches now. So I don't know if he's going to be DBs, just straight up assistant head coach. And Nick Sorenson, in-house defensive coordinator. Your thoughts on the 49ers coaching staff, Wink?
Well, I mean, the last few defensive coordinators the 49ers have promoted from within did pretty well, right? And then they went out and they got Wilkes and they brought him in, and that didn't work out so well. So who am I to say anything bad about the Sorenson hire? Like, yeah, great. You guys see something you from within, you want to promote from within, great. And what Anthony Lynn, right? He was the assistant head coach before that. Did he do anything? Like, I'm sure he did behind the scenes, right? I'm sure he was around doing stuff, but does he really like have that big of an impact on the game? And will Brandon Staley have that kind of impact? I don't know. Maybe he's, like you said, maybe he's like a fill in the gap kind of guy. Like, oh, I see linebackers not fulfilling what they need to do. I'm going to help out over here today. And then I'm going to help out on the D line, and not that Kasarik needs it, you know, that sort of thing. Like, maybe he's just going to kind of be around everyone because he's got the experience. He's been a defensive coordinator. He's been a head coach. Like, you need that in-house. That
is one thing the 49ers need, because they lost assistant D-line coach Daryl Tapp. So yeah,
there you go.
Another assistant on the D-line could help. That's probably a place. I mean, former Dayton quarterback Brandon Staley, but he's coached the defensive side of the ball since he's been coaching in his career. So who knows? D-line. He's a smart guy. I know a lot of people don't like Brandon Staley because of how things went with the Chargers, but at this role, and it's a great question you bring up, Wink, and I don't have the answer. Croc, do you know, what does an assistant head coach do? I feel like it's just a title to be able to give a guy more money to be able to bring him into your staff where he's not a play caller.
I think it's different in every place, right? I mean, assistant head coach, and you guys mentioned, Anthony
Lynn.
Anthony Lynn. I should know that. He was the coach when I was on the Jets. But you guys mentioned Anthony Lynn. And, you know, what did we do? I don't even think we ever heard him speak, or did he address things? But if I flip it and I look at, like, you know, where I coach high school football, and we have a lot of, you know, good coaches on our staff, but our assistant head coach is Lavelle Hawkins. And Lavelle Hawkins is tasked with essentially kind of being the head coach. Like, he's the voice of the team more times than not. He addresses the team at halftime when things aren't going the way he wants. He kind of sets up the plans. He helped bring on guys like Desmond Bishop, who's our defensive coordinator. So I think that he has his fingerprints on a lot of different things, and he's trusted to be that over the team. I don't know if that's the same with the 49ers or kind of a lot of different places, but I think that assistant head coach, everybody does it a little bit different.
I think maybe when it comes to something like that, as the boss, you know, I run a restaurant, right? And I have people that I have in place just to kind of keep me in check, right? I don't need yes men everywhere. And maybe that's what an assistant head coach does, right? He's the guy that will, like, whoa, Kyle, whoa, chill out for a second. Like, the guy who will actually talk some sense into Shanahan if he's like starting to get a little crazy with his schemes or something.
Yeah. Or the other way, it's someone who has respect to the team, that can talk to a team a certain way, where the head coach, his personality, or, you know, wrong side of the ball, he can't speak in a certain way to certain players and the other question I have is it assistant head coach, or is it assistant to the head coach? Is Brandon Staley like the Dwight Schrute of the 49ers coaching staff? That's
assistant to the regional manager.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. Like, one thing I do like that Steve Wilkes didn't have, that Nick Sorenson seems to have, and I don't know a lot about Nick Sorenson, but from little I've been able to gather, as he's a higher energy guy, and you might see more chest bumps on the sideline, you know, and like maybe that's what the 49ers need. And clearly they trust him in-house. And I'm sure Kyle Shanahan wasn't going to hire Nick Sorenson as defensive coordinator if, you know, the likes of Fred Warner and Nick Bosa didn't sign off on it.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Next, let's talk combine. Let's talk about rumors, player meetings that the 49ers. Let's see if we can learn a little bit about the 49ers, not only draft, but free agency plan this offseason by the players they were meeting with at the NFL scouting combine, and maybe some trades, maybe some out of the box thinking from the 49ers coming this offseason as well. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get buckets right now on FanDuel because new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's 150 extra bucks to play with if your first bet wins at FanDuel. And you can bet on all your favorite NBA players and NBA teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, tons of ways to play, whether it's NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, tennis, golf, boxing, combat sports, auto sports, you name it. You can get in on the action at FanDuel. And yes, there's still ways to bet on the NFL 2024 futures and, of course, NFL draft props. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Winky Wednesday here. Nicholas Winkler, our weekly guest, my former radio colleague. He is a game show extraordinaire. And as we know him sometimes here, voice of the fan, my former co-host of a podcast long before I started doing Locked On 49ers. And Wink, was there any player at the NFL scouting combine that you saw and you said, oh, that guy, that's a future San Francisco 49er right there? It was somebody that happened to run a record 4.2140.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy choice, right? Take the top off of defense. So no, to me, honestly, it's not about one particular player, right? It's just about finding the right player, because we mentioned all the Trey Lance picks that went away, right? And the Trey Lance pick. And then you start looking back even further, and they've hit on a couple. Sure, Nick Bosa, but that was an easy one, right? And you had, Brandon Ayuk, great pick. But then you look at like the Reuben Fosters, right? And you look at the you met Solomon Thomas's, and these high draft picks and stuff like that where you miss. And it's like, that's going to set you back a long time. So to me, the first round draft pick, even though it's basically a second round pick for the 49ers, they really need to hit on it. No matter where it's going to be, they need to hit on it because they're at a point right now where they have a lot of high price free agents that aren't going to be around that long. Right. So they need to start getting guys that are going to be there for 4 or 5 years that aren't going to cost them that much, during that time. And that maybe at that point they can extend forward. So it's all about rebuilding. That's not necessarily the farm system, because with the first round pick, you're hoping to get a starter, right? You really want a guy that's going to jump in right away, preferably for me on the offensive or defensive line. But I don't think there's just one guy out there that really stood out to me just yet.
Croc, Wink brings up something interesting, and I've been thinking about this. Is you almost always want to draft. I mean, you always want to draft best player available, especially in the first round of the draft. If there's a superstar defensive tackle, maybe it's not your biggest need, but you want to draft that versus something that's maybe a need, and you get a lesser player, right? So are we not thinking about this right as the offseason goes along? Should the 49ers be addressing things like right tackle starting week 1 in free agency, and not worrying about forcing it in the draft and letting the draft fall to them and just drafting the best player, whether it's someone who runs 4.2 or not?
I think that's ideally the route you take. You want to see if you can hit on those guys in free agency. Unfortunately, in free agency, a lot of times, especially if we're talking about, the offensive tackle position, you're not getting a great tackle more times than not in free agency. Like, those guys get locked up if they're really good. And then if you do find one that is worth a damn in the sense of being able to start, is Mike McGlinchey, who you end up paying 3 times as much as what he's potentially really worth.
Yeah, and the Niners already didn't want to do that. So you're going to get this offseason's Mike McGlinchey if you're the 49ers. And so, and I think that's why maybe offensive tackle is one of those positions where they have to figure it out. And that's why I think they might end up trading up to get one of those guys, just because they want to try to find someone who can start early. And that player might not perfectly fall to them at pick 31. I want to talk a little bit more about Xavier Worthy. We've talked a lot about this. Obviously, he set the combine record, so it's a big topic this week. And Croc and I had already done the Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell scouting reports, the wide receivers from Texas. They both blazed. They had 2 of the 3 fastest 40 times at the combine, or amongst wide receivers, and obviously Worthy the fastest time ever at the combine. And Kyle Shanahan first of all, Kyle Shanahan went to the University of Texas and played wide receiver. And apparently there was a report that he's been around the Texas campus a lot too. And so maybe he's sniffing around those guys. I don't know. But the 49ers have had like a 4-3 guy. They've had a guy with speed for Kyle Shanahan's entire tenure, but they never use him. Aside from one season with Marquise Goodwin, he had, he was a starter and had a nice season at 800 yards receiving, maybe something like that. But it's been Marquise Goodwin, it's been Travis Benjamin, it's been Danny Gray, and there's always a 4-3 guy, but he's never a factor. So I don't really understand what their purpose is with some of these guys, because they've got slow guys, they got guys that are good after the catch, they've got one true wide receiver in Brandon Ayuk, and then a 4-3 guy, and it's like, can we just get more wide receivers in the building? It's not like the guys they have are bad. Like, I love Juwan Jennings. Debo's amazing, obviously, right? But the path it's taken to get here with their wide receiver group, it's been a weird path. And I don't even know if I know better with what Kyle Shanahan's looking for. I think I kind of know, but then he'll just surprise the heck out of me and get another 4-3 guy that he doesn't utilize at all.
I think he wants the speed guy. He just wants the speed guy to give him the other things, which is weird because you know, and then you take a swing on a guy like Danny Gray. Like, that was taking a swing because it was clear to me at least, there was a lot of improving as a receiver that he needed to become the potential guy that the 49er fans wanted him to be. And so far, and there's still time, he's had to battle through injuries. He's had to battle through being a rookie for Kyle Shanahan. Then he's had to battle through injuries. Like, it's kind of tough. So we'll see if he can kind of potentially take that next step. But if you want a receiver that is going to give you a lot, that also has a speed, I think the 49ers would utilize that guy. But I don't know if they've been in position to be able to get quite that guy. Even if you look at speedy receivers over the last few years, who has been the one who's really panned out, right? And I think Kyle wants a specific guy, how he fits in his offense, but I think you got to give him a little bit more than just speed. And I think it's harder to find that guy later in rounds. So maybe that's what the issue is. Marquise Goodwin, by the way, you kind of shorted him a little bit. I want to say he had 962 yards or something like that. He was just short of 1,000. Got hurt in that last game against the Rams.
Okay, well, I knew for sure it wasn't 1,000 yards, because have you guys seen this stat about accounting Worthy now, the 30 fastest 40 times in combine history? I got to find it for you.
Is he on there?
We talked about it. Yeah, Marquise Goodwin was one of those. Marquise Goodwin.
Wait, Croc, how many yards did you say?
962.
Ooh, on the nose.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
Only 2 touchdowns though.
Yeah, and one was like a 75-yard touchdown against the New York Giants. Mills concept, they did a really good job of getting the cornerback outside shade, had the dig, or it was like kind of a dig stop route by Kendrick Bourne, held the safety, and boom, you got the whole field to throw the ball out there to a speedy guy like Goodwin. So
one of the greatest, if not the greatest, careers in NFL history, guys, for a wide receiver that's run 4.2, by the way, Marquise Goodwin. Here's the list of the 29 fastest. Xavier Worthy becomes the 30th now, and obviously he hasn't had an NFL career, so he hasn't had a chance to put up any stats yet. These are the 30 fastest 40 times for wide receivers in combine history. John Ross, Xavier Worthy now, obviously he's at the top. Dre Archer, Henry Ruggs, Marquise Goodwin, Dante Stallworth, Jacoby Ford, Tyquan Thornton, Jerome Mathis.
Stallworth was kind of good, but keep going.
He was good. Not 1,000-yard receiving. Never 1,000-yard receiving season, by the way.
Wow.
Stallworth was good, and I was surprised because and I think he must be third then, because Marquise Goodwin, if he was 962, Stallworth probably had at least some good seasons in there. I don't know what his best season was, but he was a good player. Darius Hayward-Bay, J.J. Nelson, Mike Thomas, Yamon Figures, Paris Campbell, Valus Jones, Curtis Samuel, Clyde Gates, Andy Isabella, Tyquan Underwood, Deion Butler, Travis Benjamin, Aaron Lockett, Santana Moss. Put an asterisk next to Santana Moss. Chad Jackson, Jason Hill, Troy Williamson, Lewis Murphy, Tim Carter, Will Fuller, and Calvin Austin. And Will Fuller had a nice career as well. I'd say Fuller, Stallworth, and then Marquise Goodwin are the three best that did not have 1,000-yard seasons. Because, guys, of all those guys I just mentioned, these are the 30 fastest 40 times for wide receivers in combine history. 1,000-yard wide receiver, that was Santana Moss.
Right. Fuller, never 1,000 yards, huh? I mean, obviously it was kind of short-lived. It was kind of like for a few years, it looked like, oh, he's going to be good. And then it's just, not quite. But he started off well with Deshaun Watson. No 1,000-yard receiver season there, right? It's crazy.
No, there's one. Santana Moss had 1,000 yards receiving in a season. Nobody else accomplished that of the 30 fastest times. So it's almost like disqualifying if you're that fast. Is it? And my question is, and Croc, wide receivers, is it like biomechanically impossible to be a good receiver, good route runner if you're built in a way to run that fast? It's like my guy Matt Williamson said, it's like a dragster trying to drive F1 and trying to turn.
So real quick, Will Fuller, 879 yards, 8 touchdowns in one season there. So yeah, definitely short of 1,000 yards. That was 2020.
Even if you say there was, Stallworth, Fuller, Moss, Goodwin, 4 out of 30 is still not good numbers for being fast at the combine.
No, crazy. So the thing that you're looking for with the 40-yard dash as it pertains to receivers, and not even the 40-yard dash, just speed in general, is high-end controlled speed. It's not so much about hitting that top speed on a go route, because how often are you really going to run go routes throughout a game, right? But utilizing the threat, and we're talking about this with A.D. Mitchell. I just went back watching that Alabama game as I was told to watch by, and I did watch it, but I think I watched it from the eyes of Arnold and Kool-Aid as opposed to the receivers. But I'm watching it, and for a guy like Mitchell who ran so fast, you would like to see more high-end controlled speed. So let's say Keenan Allen, a guy who ran 4.7, coming off of an injury, had some kind of injury. He had his own pro day, but he ran a 4.7. And I would say anybody that's watched Keenan Allen play, if you take away the 40 time or whatever you think it was, you'd say this guy plays fast. Well, he has high-end control speed. So even if there's a guy, right, because let's say the 10-yard splits or your 20-yard splits, a lot of times they kind of can get up to speed close to the same, but who can get up to that top speed and be able to throttle that route down? It's not as big of a difference as most people think from that standpoint. So you look at some of the other guys, Devontae Adams, I think he does a terrific job of having high-end controlled speed. It's very rare you see a real like crazy speedster be able to control speed at a high level. When you get that, you get Tyreek Hill. But right. There's a reason there's only one Tyreek Hill. Right. Also, Jalen Waddle, he's another guy. Watching him at Alabama, crazy high-end control speed. He wasn't invited to the combine. I don't think Hill was either. Or Waddle was hurt. Hill, for off-field reasons, was not invited. So I think those are two guys that would have blazed a 40, but they both had terrific high-end control speed. It was all over their film. It's very rare you find that guy. So you look at a Darius Hayward-Bay or a Clyde Gates, who I actually, had an opportunity to be on the chest with for a little bit. Straight line, they can run fast, but the NFL DBs can run fast too. So you have to be able to control that speed at the top of routes, and a lot of guys can't.
Next, I want to talk combine meetings for the San Francisco 49ers and what we can learn from it. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit every time or your money back. I love the guaranteed fit. There's a big green check mark. You can't go wrong. That part is going to fit your vehicle, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your vehicle into the MVP and bring home that W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit available to U.S. customers. Wink's back with us. Did your computer crash? What happened there?
It
Wink?
did. Yeah, I'm on my phone right now, so if it seems a little weird, that's why.
Okay. That's fine. You're resourceful. You got back in no time. I like that. The 49ers looking for resourceful football players. Wink, show me your shocked face that the San Francisco 49ers at the Combine met with a whole bunch of offensive linemen, a whole bunch of defensive linemen, a whole bunch of cornerbacks, and a whole bunch of wide receivers.
Wow. I mouthed it because I knew you were going to do it.
Yeah, of course. It's like, and so, I've talked about this last year. I think the best thing, and actually I want to shout out Steph Sanchez, and she's done a great job of keeping track of who the 49ers are meeting with at, Shrine Game, Senior Bowl, Combine, 30 visits that'll be coming up as well for the 49ers. And it's important, and it's very useful to see these things and know who the 49ers are meeting with, but it's not helpful for each specific prospect. To me, where it's helpful is figuring out what positions the 49ers are really looking at hard. Last year, it was obvious. They met with every tight end in every kind of way. And what they do, they drafted not only one, but two tight ends. And they drafted one with an early pick and, again, one with a late pick. And so I think that's what we're seeing in this draft is the 49ers doing a lot of work on the position groups that it's not shocking to anybody. They're the same position groups that we outlined are going to be important for the 49ers in this draft. Those are the positions they're looking at. So expect offensive linemen, expect a couple of offensive linemen, in my opinion, expect the cornerback, expect a wide receiver, and you can expect every year out of the 49ers a defensive lineman or two. And so that's where we're at. And any other combine rumors that you hear that you're interesting, Wink? And I think you have something to say about the combine meetings as well.
Well, I think you left one off the list, one expectation that the 49ers just do every single year. They're going to draft a running back. It's probably going to be in the third round, but maybe this year they'll wait a little bit, go a little bit later.
Hey, that's the fingerprint that Anthony Lynn left on the 49ers is when he was brought in as running backs coach. He was allowed. They were like, they asked it, but this is a simple version, but from reports, this is what happened. They're like, okay, new running backs coach, because Bobby Turner, remember, Bobby Turner is the master. And he's the one that calls all of these running backs, and they draft all these late round running backs because Bobby Turner is the guy that likes them. And he spearheads that. And so Bobby Turner was out for a while. And so they brought in Anthony Lynn, and he's the new running backs coach. They're like, okay, Anthony Lynn, you're the running backs coach. Which one of these running backs do you like? And he said, I want TDP. I want Ty Davis Price. And so that was one of his big moments for the San Francisco 49ers. Now Anthony Lynn and Ty Davis Price are neither one on the San Francisco 49ers. But I'm not against, by the way, if they want to draft one of these dudes in the third round that can blaze, that can catch the football out of the backfield. I don't think we should expect Christian McCaffrey to play another 20 straight games. Like he's been a cyborg for the 49ers. It's been phenomenal. And I do think that if they do go to running back, don't draft the dude who's 230 pounds unless he can absolutely fly. Make sure you can fly first, right? And there's a couple of guys that remind me a lot of Raheem Mostert in this draft that were absolutely flying at the combine. There's a Tennessee running back I've talked about before on this podcast that the first time I saw him, I was like, that is Raheem Mostert. A little upright, but man, he puts his foot in the ground and he goes. Jalen Wright out of Tennessee, 5'10 and a half, 210 pounds. So he's got some decent size, much like Raheem Mostert does, but not necessarily he's a power back. 4.38 40-yard dash for Jalen Wright. And then Isaac Guerendo out of Louisville, 6 feet, 221. So he's got some size, 4.33. I mean, he went crazy at the combine. He had one of the best speed score, spark, RAS, whatever you want to look at. Unbelievable out of Louisville. At 221 pounds, 6 feet, he ran 4.33. He had a 41.5-inch vertical. And you want to talk about agilities, he had a 6.94 3-cone. Anything under 7 seconds is really good. 4.15 short shuttle, which is pretty good as well. So, he lit the whole place on fire. Sort of an underreported combine there for Isaac Guerendo. Now, you got to have vision. You got to have balance. You got to have a lot of things to be in a good running back. Frank Gore Jr., by the way, in the house at 5'7" and 5'8", 201. Did not run. I don't know if he's going to run a great 40 time, but Frank Gore available late too. Of course, nobody's going to be. You're not going to have a problem with Frank Gore Jr. being a 49er, right, Wink?
I think we'd be all okay with that.
Yeah.
What did he run?
He didn't run. He did not run. I didn't know he was that short, though. It's not that his dad was tall or anything. Frank Gore was 5'9", right?
Yeah.
So dad's got an inch and a half on him. He's built like him. He looks like him, too. Talks like him.
He does.
Yeah, he was at the podium.
Face, it's like they just took
Crazy.
Frank Gore's face and then just okay, let's take a few years off your age and then place him on another body, and that's what it looks like. It's really kind of wild. Like, there are people that look like their parents, and then there's like kids that sometimes look like one of the parents had nothing to do with making the child. Frank Gore had everything to do with making that child, and I'd assume that he looks nothing like his mom.
Have you seen the side-by-sides of Frank Gore from like when he was a rookie and then at the end of his career when he was on the Jets?
Yeah, it's like the same person.
Face looks exactly the same. So I don't know if he always looked old or now looks young. But I think it's
both.
Yeah. Okay. We got to get out of here, guys. Always fun. Oh, last one. Wink. Brian Burns looking for edge rushers. He got the tag on him. How about tag and trade? 49ers going big. Going outside the box, doing something nobody expected last offseason that they were going to make a big move for Javon Hargrave. What about just making that D-line the Avengers and trading pick 31 in a tag and trade scenario for Brian Burns from the Carolina Panthers? Wing.
I mean, I think only a crazy person would not want Brian Burns on their football team.
You know who could be that role for the 49ers? What about Chop Robinson? I've seen him mocked to pick 31. He's coming up tomorrow with Croc and I, future 49ers. We're doing our scouting reports. We're trying to put together an official Locked On 49ers draft board. Who knows? Maybe we'll go shadow 49ers with it.
Let's go.
And, Chop Robinson, edge rusher from Penn State, coming up tomorrow, along with Nate Wiggins, who blazed at the Combine. Both of those guys combine standouts. Cornerback from Clemson. Those are the next up. A whole bunch of offensive linemen on our list. We're going to get some more wide receivers, some more corners as well. All those positions the 49ers are meeting with, we're going to dive into the tape on those guys as well. And, of course, bring back our friend Nicholas Winkler next Wednesday as well.
The Wink is on fire!
Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.